Hello everyone, this is a quick intro into GenSync and just a quick run through of how it works and the other interfaces that you'll see here. So when you initially log in, you will see how you can stop and start your syncs over here. Very easy just to hit or refresh, it's going to get an updated status there. You can also quickly check the status of your connection. So if you're having any kind of issues with, say, your HubSpot connection, you can quickly validate it from here just to make sure it's all okay. You can scroll further down and then you can also see all your data sources that are connected as well at a quick glance here. And if we jump over to data sources, this is where you can add additional sources. So you currently can select from Databricks, BigQuery, or MySQL, but if you have any other sources that you'd like us to connect up, just let us know and we can add it here as an option. Once you go through the connection process, you can then, sorry, I'll just click into it. So here you can set up essentially all the config for your data source. And this one is using MySQL, so I'm defining all the remote connection details here. Once that's saved, you can validate this as well just by testing the connection. Again, it'll just say if it was successful or not, which is what you're looking for. Once the sources are all hooked up and HubSpot's connected, that's when you can start to build out your data syncs. So if I jump over to the data sync tab, you'll see I've got a few set up here already. You can either quickly stop or start syncing as well. So if you wanted to pause a current sync, you can turn it off here. You can quickly add a new sync really easily by clicking on this, give it a title, select your connections, define all your other settings, and away you go there. Also select a frequency of when the sync will run, which objects it's going to sync to. Jump over to one that's already set up here. So here we have a few syncs going on already, one for contacts, deals, and companies. If I jump over to contacts and show you that config there, you can see you have all the overall settings. So you can see it's pulling from a MySQL table called contacts. It's checking a modifier column just for new records, and then it's mapping it to the HubSpot object, which is a contact, and then it's checking for data every minute. So these are the overall settings for that particular sync. You can now jump over to field mappings. You can see here we've actually mapped a few additional fields. We're deduping on email address. You can easily add additional fields by clicking here. You can just search. It will automatically pull in all the columns from the table, so you can quickly just pick and identify which ones you want to map. And then let's map this property to the message field. You've got a toggle here to select it for deduplication, but we're already using the email address here, so it's no longer required because ignore that setting there. You can also define the mapping types. So strict, this is quite an important one to use if you're mapping to drop-down properties on the HubSpot side because it has to match exact values. If you select that, you can kind of work through and add all your values. You can see here, it's actually pulling through certain values, and now you can define it here as well. Because it's a string property, it's not going to auto-populate. So this will actually pull the values from HubSpot, so you get exact matches as well, which is quite handy. But this is a string property, so we will just use flexible. Flexible means it's just going to take whatever it is in that database column and then drop it into the HubSpot property there. So this is the simplest one. And then for the advanced, you can actually generate transformation rules. You can generate this with AI pretty quickly, and it'll drop a rule in here. And then when the processing happens, it's going to check that and then apply those rules to that transformation. But we'll just run with strict for this one. No, sorry, flexible for this one. Save. And now that mapping has been added here. You can also build out associations. So you can go through the process here where you can build out associations. Oops, meant to use deal. So here, contacts would be associated to deals based off a appropriate column. So for this to work, you need a column with multiple IDs that relate back to the other object. And then you can set that all up here. You need to define what the matching column is on the other table. For example, another ID, and you can save that in there too. So this would start to build out those. You can also apply labels. For that, you would need multiple columns on the table, and then you could select a label as well to be applied during the sync at the same time. If you quickly wanted to preview the data, so one problem we often found is if you have someone that's not super technical, they can't query the database to see what's available for mapping. So created this interface here to quickly show what's pulling from one of the source tables. So quickly you can kind of see what's available, and then that can help guide you on what you're mapping there. You can also resync data. So seeing as we just added a new mapping here, we might want to resync data going back to a certain amount of time. So you can define what date it's going to go back to, and then it'll reference the modify column here. So say we wanted to sync a week's worth of data going back that far, you just pick the appropriate date and then hit submit, and then it'll pick up and start resyncing all those records directly back into HubSpot. So again, that's quite useful if you've forgotten the mapping and you want to resync things and bring them back in line, or if there's been a bulk update, potentially you might want to resync going back to a certain time frame there. So deactivate the syncs pretty easily here. You can manage and delete any associations and bits and pieces easily here as well. And that's it on the data syncs here. We support quite a few objects. We also support deals and orders and line items, which is quite unique. If you have those separate tables with that data, you can synchronize that all in and then associate them all together pretty easily. We also support upserting of line items using the new beta as well, which is quite handy. That was always a bit of a pain point for just getting line items in, and then if you wanted to update them, there wasn't a unique property on the line items, which is now been addressed on the HubSpot side, which is quite nice as well. We've factored that into the app here. So it's another use case that we overcome with that. But you can build out multiple syncs here. So if you had data in several different sources, you could add multiple sources and it'll just keep overlaying that data onto the HubSpot records accordingly, which is quite useful. And then the other component is the activity logs. So if you've made some kind of mistake, so you can see here there's an issue. I think this was from trying to associate some things together potentially, and that was invalid options. I've been trying to upsert a property, but there's no match. So you get quite detailed logs here when something goes wrong. And then again, that can help you just figure out what you've mapped incorrectly and adjust it pretty quickly. Just going over to the settings. You can also add additional people to your account. So if you wanted to have another admin or somebody else manage this, you can add multiple employees, give them a different role. So watching.